don't think a dystopia warning really cuts it with what I'm going to be talking to you about today. A couple of days ago, Netanyahu's army bombed another humanitarian site. This time it was a makeshift hospital, and children, mothers, men, innocent civilians were burned alive in tents with IV drips still attached to their arms. And not one single paper in this country thought to put that war crime on the front page, because that's how it works, isn't it? That's how the cloak of invincibility is sustained by Benjamin Netanyahu. Hardly surprising when we've got a right-wing media class with immense bias that has spent the last 14 years doing whatever the Tory government wanted them to do, a Tory government that basically used Islamophobia and racism as policy, that dehumanised and othered people that are not white, people that are brown, people that are Muslim, people that are not just, white Christians. A government that actually actively encouraged the EDL to rise up and trash Remembrance Day because a free Palestine protest was taking place miles away on the same day. A government that referred to people trying to stand up for those displaced and killed in what is effectively, let's call it what it is, a genocide, as hate marchers. Yeah, anti-Semitic by default, when this has absolutely got nothing to do with religion to most normal people. It's just about a basic comprehension of right and wrong. I'm not an expert on geopolitics. I'm not a fan of organised religion. But I understand basic definitions, and I know that self-defence isn't murdering innocent civilians. Nor is it going into a sovereign country and exploding loads of pages with absolutely no concern for the civilians that are surrounding those people that you see as targets, only for the right-wing press across the world to defend it as a particularly clean attack. No, mate, it was a terrorist attack. That's the very definition of a terrorist attack. Just because it's carried out by someone that you side with doesn't stop it being what it is, does it? And that's the problem we have. For the last year, Netanyahu has not been defending Israel. He has been enacting revenge. And he's not going to stop until every one of them's dead. What people have faced in Gaza is beyond comprehension. Just moving from humanitarian site to humanitarian site, hoping that this time they might survive the shelling that is deliberately aimed at humanitarian sites, deliberately aimed at hospitals, deliberately aimed at places where innocent people just trying to live are sheltering, that have been displaced and uprooted. This did not start on October the 7th. This has been decades of occupation. And every single time he wipes out another family, he's creating a future fundamentalist that is going to, by default, due to having nothing left to live for, hate Israel. I don't think that the people in Gaza need to be trained to hate Israel anymore. I think that ended a long time ago. I think they've just seen what's happened around them. And the people of Gaza are absolutely not Hamas, just as the people of Israel are not automatically Netanyahu. People aren't their governments. If he is doing this as some kind of religious crusade, I think someone needs to break it to him that there's no place in heaven, if it does exist, which let's face it doesn't. There's no place in heaven for people that murder children. You're not going to the good place. And then you see the hypocrisy of conservative politicians pointing out that the war crimes being committed by Putin, which are being committed by Putin. I'm not defending Putin. I'm behind the people of Ukraine. But the difference in the way that they see it, things that Putin's done to the Ukrainians are met with disdain and anguish by Conservative MPs, whilst they sit there and do nothing about people, innocent people, being burned to death in tents in Gaza. A life in Ukraine is not worth more than a life in Gaza. A life in Britain is not worth more than a life in Gaza. All human life should be protected and seen as sacred, and civilians should never been targeted, but they are deliberately, repeatedly targeted by Netanyahu. They are war crimes. This is why he's not let the media in for a year. This is why all we have are eyewitness accounts from brave people that are live streaming death and destruction in front of them because they're just desperate for people to see it, and the least that the press can do is fucking report it. But they're failing to, and they're failing to properly inform the populations of the UK. I'm using this as an example, but the US know better, They're not doing anything. I mean, why would they? I mean, there's an election coming up, and what do, brown Muslims matter to them? The current UK government is doing absolutely nowhere near enough. I mean, even if they did try to intervene, there's no guarantee they're going to stop Netanyahu. I mean, this is what happens when you let a genocidal maniac run riot. But at least it'd show that they tried. They're doing nothing to try to stop this. And on it'll go. And on it'll go. And it'll be a moment when it eventually finishes, when he's finally killed them all, where people will sit by and go, oh fuck, how did that happen? Because you let it, because you didn't intervene, because you decided to stand by that scumbag as an ally. Then history will be rewritten by the victor, like it always is, because this is how it works. They burned to death civilians with IV drips still attached to their arms. They left babies to die in incubators by shutting off the power. They attacked UN peacekeepers. They carried out a widespread terrorist attack in another country. They've cut off food, water, supplies to sustain life. They've shot dead children. They've even killed Israeli hostages by shooting them, and also with the widespread shelling of Gaza, which is sometimes indiscriminate, but sometimes very carefully targeted, like at humanitarian sites where civilians are sheltering. Shame on anyone in a position of power that could have tried to do something about this but has failed. And shame on the press for failing to do their job properly and inform people of what's happening. And shame on anyone who thinks that any of this is in any way justified. Because if you think that, you're devoid of basic humanity. Prime Minister went on the telly the other day, said, I stand with Israel. I f***ing don't. Neither do most people in this country. Because most people in this country know the difference between right and wrong. And we know that murdering children, regardless of their religion or skin colour, is despicable.